Good afternoon, traders. It is May 9th and day 34 of the 100x challenge. Two accounts, 10,000 each between Tesla and Strategy, where the first two $1 million wins. I film just twice a week to document every play. This is not advice, just a journey. So follow along, tap subscribe, and let's get into the trades. All right, so we're going to look at the ledgers first. It's a great week. I mean, what a finish. We had Powell speak on Wednesday, and we definitely took some positions off the table just in case things went haywire the wrong direction. But hey, you know what? There wasn't a whole lot said, period. But the markets just kind of brushed it off, and both accounts actually went up 11.5%. Isn't that interesting? Looking at the balances real quick, the strategy account is now up 62%. That is mad. That is just 34 days, 62% positive compared to, look at this, 31% from the underlying stock itself. That's a mistake. 412.5. All right, 62% compared to 42%. Still outperforming, which is great. Yeah, 29.45 total. That's right. I am now carrying a bag of money to represent how well this week has been. 62,000 is pretty damn good for strategy. I want to look at the charts real quick, and I'll start with Tesla because I'm here, but we really need to analyze where we think the price is going to go. One thing that we need to pay attention to is things like the RSI, and let me just switch it to the daily, which is starting to creep up a little bit, but I think that plenty safe. We have a lot of headroom up above us. This was kind of my blue area. If we were going to go down, this is where I would expect us to bounce. Still could happen. But for now, I'm going to take that off the table because it does look like we want to make another leg up for Tesla. And if I were to redraw this as far as a target zone, it's going to be between this point and this point. So something like this, something like that is where I would draw, or some support here, resistance here. So the bottom of this box is what I would expect us to reach if we were to keep going higher, which could take several weeks to get there. We may chop a little bit. So that's what I'm going to keep in mind as I'm setting my positions for this week and beyond. Looking at strategy, one thing I want to point out, I've kind of talked about this before, but we're taking this very steep staircase all the way up, which worries me somewhat. This is not normal. This is not how markets usually work. Having some sort of slide before we continue a new staircase or some sort of pump would be normal here. So I'm trying to be very cautious, but one thing I want to point out is if it's going to be anything like the staircase that we had back in September all the way to December, then we're in for a ride still, and we may not get that drop down. We had two drops, though, which were probably about 15% or so, 10 to 15%. So stuff like this is what I would expect, at least some sort of correction down to like 375 before we continue. But you never know. I do think that there is some resistance, though, where we're at here, and I have a tweet to kind of go over that. I want to take a quick look at Bitcoin because this is also important. Strategy is going to follow the price of Bitcoin. And so I wanted to see, when's the last time that we had any type of price movement that mirrored what you see here, which is simply pumping, breaking, setting a new base, pumping, breaking, setting a new base, and now we pumped again, and now we are breaking. Breaking meaning paused. And who knows how long, or if this is going to be our new pause zone, but I drew a little box that extends all the way to the all-time high, which is around 108, and then coming down to about 100. So we could go sideways here. We could pause, set a new base, and then continue, or we just fly right through. Really just depends on how much buy pressure. We could obviously drop too, but looking at this particular fractal to see if this is something that has happened in the past, I had to go all the way back the beginning of 2024 when we went from around 36 all the way up to 73. I mean, what a move over, roughly 2 months. And so we have the same type of thing, right? Set a base, pause on the first small pump here, and then pump, base, pump. And this is kind of where we're at right now. if we were going to compare the two. We are in this type of range where if this continues, I mean, it's basically showing what could happen. I don't know if I doubt this is going to happen exactly the same. In fact, it's very unlikely. But if it did happen similar to this, then we would expect us to continue to go upward in a, you know, diagonal formation in this case instead of just a continuation. We did have some chop, but we worked our way up. This is on the daily, so over the next 2 weeks or so, maybe that'll happen. I'm not sure. And then after that, obviously, we just went into kind of this sideways depression for most of 2024. So on the bright side, look at this. We already have been going sideways for a while, and we did kind of have this mini 2024 depression zone, which already occurred, and we're trying to basically dig our way out of. So, this lasted for quite a long time as well, from November all the way down to April, which is roughly 6 months. So two things are going to happen. One, we're going to burst out, and I have this blue box, which I drew a long time ago, indicating where we might go next. And then, or two, we either go, I guess three, we go sideways in this blue box, in this blue area before we move up, or we come down maybe at the halfway point around 90,000 quickly. And I mean quickly, come down, touch that area, and then probably move higher. That's kind of what I would expect. And so I need to keep all of those situations in my head before I'm making any crazy moves. Will that affect my positioning this week? I'll tell you in a second. So let's look at some tweets, which I found interesting. First thing is, Trump came out the other day and said, you better go out and buy stocks now. Let me tell you, this country will be like a rocket ship that goes straight up. Yeah, a lot of speculation on whether Trump really cares about what happens in the stock market has been brought up many times this year, because he's basically broken the stock markets in the efforts of raising tariffs and making trade seemingly more fair for everybody. But as you can see, he is paying attention to the stock market. And so, my philosophy has always been, as long as stock is in charge, he wants to see markets go up. His companies are well invested in both crypto and stocks. And so I do believe that that is something that is in the back of his mind at all times. And as you can see, he's obviously making that public. One thing to note here is the M2 money supply, which is this orange line. This is global M2. This is the amount of money, essentially, that is in the overall worldwide economy. You can see the orange line representing the M2 money supply. If you actually move this line forward, what happens is the price of strategy lines up almost perfectly with this orange line, which might be foreshadowing what's going to happen very soon. This is a little out of date. If I make this larger, you can see it's actually from $350. Strategy is now up to $410. So it's actually doing an amazing job keeping up with this M2 supply. So, that's one theory, that we're just going to continue to match almost perfectly with the M2 supply. But the other thing to keep in mind is, Donovan points out that we are actually approaching a very important resistance, 61.8 retracement level. That's a Fibonacci level right now. So this would be considered a pretty large resistance level, as well as the fact that the RSI is coming to overbought zone. So that's something to keep in mind. And then Kevin Svensson, one of my favorite Bitcoin chartists, he's basically saying a possible retest of 100,000 is in play before the next leg up, which has a measured move of 114. The theory here is that we're going to continue this pattern going up. And if we do, then expect some possible chop here, like I had in my blue box there. But in this case, he has 100,000 to 104,000 before we move up, which could take a week or two. Okay, let's look at the tastytrade accounts, because we need to decide exactly how we're going to position ourselves moving into next week. Everything's pretty simple here for strategy. We have the debit spread that we actually put in place a week ago, and it's going pretty well. And we've actually gone up. I was expecting probably correction, but I made this play just in case. And we're up $123 on this spread. We're going to just go ahead and leave it as is. Even though I'm a little bit more neutral to bearish over the next week, we still have 21 days before this expires. And, just because I may have a thesis doesn't mean my crystal ball is going to be accurate. So I'd rather just go ahead and let this play out, see if we hit at least the 450 target within the next 3 weeks. So it absolutely could happen. Over to Tesla, because we will open a new position here. If you remember, on Tuesday, I closed the income position because of FOMC. It was too risky to leave that position open, and so I ended up closing it. Protecting the downside is just too important. But in this case, if we didn't have FOMC, then I would have just left it open. But I thought that was kind of important to protect. So looking at exactly how to play this, I don't know that we have any major events next week. So I'm going to play this just slightly different from last week. And the way I'm going to do that is, one, we're going to always take a 80 to 85 delta position on the purchase call. So in this case, it's going to be a 90 delta, which is great. It's going to act like a synthetic stock. And then we're going to go ahead and sell a 280. The difference between last week and this week is we're going to sell a May 23rd. So we're going to give it a little bit more time. We've pumped quite a bit. And so I think it's important to go ahead and sell something that provides a little bit more income. So we're talking about $2,400 in this case, and then give us a little bit of space if the price does go down. So by doing 2 weeks in the future, we're essentially giving ourselves a little bit more of a buffer. We can let this play out until the 23rd instead of having a position that is going to expire in 7 days. I prefer 7 days just because it's a little bit more, you're going to collect a little bit more, but sometimes you do have to adjust it based on the current price action and kind of where your bias is. In this case, I'm pretty neutral on Tesla. I actually am a little bit more neutral. I do think that there's plenty of upside to go here. Getting to 330 would not surprise me one bit. The reason why I stacked it the way I did was because if you look at option strat here, if things play out and IV stays the same, then I have all of this area to make profit. And I've actually moved the date toggle to next Friday. So it's really handy that we can actually just move the date back and forth and kind of predict where things might be on a specific day. But if we just let this expire, which is also a possibility, then we can go ahead and take home a little bit more. But my plan is to go ahead and just probably take profits. If we can get into this $300 range, then we'll just go ahead and close the position next Friday. So this is what we're doing today. We're going to buy 230 on the 620 and then sell 280 on the 523. Going back to Tasty Trade, let's go ahead and get that done. 236.20. We're going to buy the 230 on 620. And then we're going to sell the 280, yes, on 523. Sell the 280. All right, so 47.48, let's make sure that matches. 47.42, yep, that's about right. All right, let's punch that through. Make sure we're on the right account, yep. And we are through. Tesla positions are set. Yep, we'll see how those go next week. Hopefully we do better on these income positions. We need to definitely start raking in that income in order to then make these stronger or make changes here to these longer term positions. But that is going to cover this video. I hope you guys found this content useful. Come back next Tuesday is when we're going to relook at all the positions to see if anything needs to change. But overall, I'm super happy with how things are going. These accounts really have done so well, and I couldn't be more happy with the progress. But thanks for following me. I appreciate all your comments and likes, but we'll see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.